Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OurScoop.com. You already know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Scoop, the weekly podcast of OurScoop.com, the authority on Temple Athletics. We are on to episode 37 of season 10. Got a full house again. Johnny Zwizlak, Jason Yevis, Colin Schofield, Ryan Mack, and Kyle Gauss back with us. Kyle, did you listen last week?
Not at all.
No chance. No chance.
I don't want to paint the picture that I'm like working two full-time jobs and all this stuff, but like, I don't have the free time for podcasts. So like if I'm not on it, I don't listen. I listen to the same 17 songs on repeat.
Fair.
Totally fair.
Nevertheless, we're all back this week. Oh boy, do we have a lot of stuff to get to. It's been a rough week for the Temple men's basketball program in the portal. We've got so much stuff to get into with spring ball, a very, very full mailbag. This is going to be a very mailbag heavy episode of position battles, portal stuff, a lot of recruiting scoop. We've been staying on top of that. Johnny, the Phillies are 1-0. You got to be happy.
Correct. I am very happy.
The Phillies are 2-0 because of their sleeper agent, Hector Neris, whatever, going into the Braves and just reminding everyone that he's a terrible pitcher in the first game of the season.
He'll face the Phillies whenever they come here though, and
Won't be for the Braves.
Is that what your tweet was about yesterday?
No, my tweet was about the fact that I actually paid for MLB TV this year for the first time in like 3 years, tried to do the right thing, and it crashes on opening day. So I went right back to illegal streams. They don't crash on me. They're always there for me.
When's first pitch day for the Phils? Are they tonight or are they off?
They're off today. They play tomorrow at 4.
Okay.
Also must be nice. Braves open with a 6-game West Coast road trip. 6 straight days, 9:40 first pitch tonight. I'm not staying up for
You're
that.
gonna burn yourself out.
I was asleep at 10 o'clock last night. You texted me at 10:30. I saw it this morning.
Yeah. Well, now you're well rested and ready to scoop again. Scoop, as always, brought to you by Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. If you've been injured while on the road of the highway and the crash was someone else's fault, the insurance company is not going to be on your side. You need us, Temple Law Grads, will fight hard to get the compensation that you deserve. We only get paid if we win, so in Pennsylvania or New York, call us today at 215-261-7359. That's 215-261-7359. And you can find them on the web at greenspans-law.com. That's greenspans-law.com. Johnny, Jay, what do you have cooked up for On or Around the State?
Welcome to another edition of On or Around the State. We have a very packed birthday and event schedule for you all, as well as the rest of the scoop is extremely packed. So we're gonna get right into it. John, do you want to start with birthdays or events?
You're asking me?
Ooh. Of course.
Wow. Let's go events and close out with birthdays.
All right, we're going to start with events. On March 29th of 1999, this Canadian ice hockey player scored his final goal of his career and later retired that season.
Gretzky.
Correct. Wayne Gretzky is the correct answer. Moving on to the next event. On March 29th, 1973, American troops evacuated Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City as the United States ended its involvement in this war.
Vietnam.
Correct. My final event on March 29th, 1961, this amendment of the Constitution was certified, allowing residents of Washington, D.C. to vote in presidential elections.
This amendment, the number?
Yes, number amendment. See, I gave you 2 softballs. Now you got to actually think.
22.
Incorrect. Very close, though.
It's not 21. So 23.
23rd Amendment?
Correct. The 23rd Amendment of the U.S. Constitution was the one that allowed Washington, D.C. residents to vote in presidential elections. Jay, I'll send it over to you.
Real quick, my always like a push memory for some amendments was 21 is repealing of prohibition because you have to be 21 to drink.
Oh,
A little reminder there. That gives you a benchmark where you know. Well, after. So, okay.
Yeah, that's smart.
I got a 2 on the A push test, so
For someone that can basically think of any U.S. president based
I got a 2.
That actually shocks me a little bit.
You did not know high school, Kyle.
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Let's just say it was a good thing that 2007 Temple University's admission standards were a little lower than they are today.
Fair enough.
Jay, what do you have for events?
All right, I just have two events. First starting in March 28th, 1794. This museum in France opened to the public, although it was officially open since August of that
The
year.
Louvre.
It is the
I've
Louvre.
been to the Louvre. If you ever go to Paris, there's a main entrance, huge line. You think you're out your ass. There's a back entrance to the Louvre where they accept the same ticket, so you can kind of just cut right to the front. You got passed by 45 scammers because Paris is nothing but swarmy people trying to scam you out of things.
We apologize.
Correct.
to all our
Stranger
French
danger.
listeners.
They try the fake ring on the ground. They try tying something around you. They try getting your wife to buy a rose. It's all scams.
Stranger danger.
Damn.
They also don't.
All right,
They
my
also
second
don't like bars. There's no bars in Paris. It's all just cafes.
Really?
It's like cafes and like clubs. Like there's no just like where can I go sit here and get a drink? They're like, yeah, we don't do that.
That's
You
pretty
also
lame.
can't just go to a restaurant and just order a drink. Like it's not a bar. It's a restaurant. You have to order food. And since it's Paris, it takes 17 hours for you to get food.
So what you're
Beautiful.
saying is Paris sucks.
So we
Beautiful
should
city.
go to Paris.
Beautiful city because when Napoleon ran France, he just said, I'm going to wipe all this shit clean and we're going to build these beautiful buildings. So you'll go to like a pharmacy and it's like the most beautiful building you've ever seen in your life.
Nice.
How do I continue after that?
Go to Versailles. Versailles rules.
I really can't. Okay, March 29th, 1929. This U.S. president has the first telephone installed on the desk at the Oval Office in the White House.
29 is Hoover?
It is Hoover.
Damn, that's good, Kyle.
All right, Johnny, over to you for birthdays.
With presidents, you just use FDR as the benchmark.
Yeah,
And then Hoover's right before FDR. Go from there.
fair enough. We're going to move on to famous birthdays. On March 29th, 1867, this Hall of Fame MLB player was born. He has the record for most wins as an MLB pitcher.
Cy Young.
Correct. Cy Young is the correct
He has the
answer.
most losses too, right? Because they just threw every game back
Yeah,
then.
they just threw every game.
Like, we don't really care about you. Please just go out there and throw 45 miles per hour for 9 innings.
Yeah, pretty much. Moving on to the next one. On March 28th, 1970, this actor was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His breakthrough role was as Trent Walker in the 1996 film Swingers.
Vince Vaughn.
On?
Vince Vaughn is the
Vince Vaughn's from
correct-
Minnesota.
I didn't
Yes,
know.
he
No
is.
idea.
Hmm,
I thought
I didn't know
maybe-
that, so I felt like I had to put it in there.
Maybe he was born in Minnesota but grew up like. Doesn't he have deep Chicago roots? Isn't he a big
He does,
Chicago
yeah.
guy?
You
Yeah.
also realize that if everyone that like lives in the Midwest like has Chicago roots because it's the only big city. Like they're either from like St. Louis, or they're from Chicago. Well, unless you're Jeff Teague, then for some reason you claim you're from Indianapolis.
Okay. Moving on to the next one. On March 28th, 1986, this pop singer was born in New York City. She became the first recording artist in history to have 3 singles to sell over 4 million
Gaga?
copies.
I was
I didn't
thinking
even get to finish my sentence.
I was thinking it was Lady Gaga. That's good. Yeah.
Lady Gaga is the correct answer.
Jumping the line because there is decorum to this though. You're supposed to let Johnny finish before you.
I mean, yeah, I didn't get to finish.
So -1 points for John, plus 1 point for Kyle for being a good listener.
I don't. Well, technically, everyone else was a good listener.
They
too.
also all get 1 point, but I'm not competing with them.
Fair enough.
Take
Fair enough.
Here we go.
Jay, go ahead.
All right, I have two as well. On March 28th, 1955, this female country singer was born in McAllister, Oklahoma.
Dolly Parton.
Dolly?
No,
So that's too young to be Dolly. Reba.
it is Reba.
Reba.
Wow.
Reba was part of
I
like
cannot tell you one song.
neither could I, but she had that she had that show Reba that they always played on TBS reruns. So I would see a couple of Reba episodes.
All right, my second one. Kyle, I expect you to get this since you're the president person. This president was born March 29th, 1790 in Charles City County, Virginia.
1790 in Virginia, so they would have been president in like 1830s,
William
1840s.
Henry Harrison?
No,
I'm going to say James K. Polk.
No.
Hmm.
He was the 10th president of the United States and the first to succeed a president because of the office holder's death. He also led the way for the annexation of Texas in 1845.
245. So you're 20 years before Lincoln. You're the 10th president. Taylor?
Not
Tyler.
Zachary Taylor?
Tyler.
John Tyler.
William Tyler?
That's why I definitely said that the first time, and not Taylor.
All right, John, you want to wrap us up?
And that was on or around this day.
I think I won.
Kyle, you did win by a landslide.
Or more.
Do we have an all-time like
So-
score count of this?
We definitely should.
I'm gonna get the next batch of interns. That's gonna be their first project. Go back and listen to the last however many years. We're on around this date, and please tally everything.
See, I would say you'd be in the lead, Kyle, but like sometimes you're not here. So then that
Yeah,
gives you
That's fair. I think I'd still probably win. I'm just assuming, again, as somebody that is not a avid listener of the Scoop, I'm just assuming that without my being here, John doesn't necessarily step up. He might fill the void, but I don't think he's getting all the answers.
fair enough, you know.
I'm not even defending himself. He's just there.
I was on good track today, and then you were like, you jumped in and
You did jump in. There has to be rules. It's Jeopardy rules. You can't interrupt like Alex Trebek. Well, now he's dead, so can't interrupt him at all. But like you have to, like it's not just I have a buddy from high school that was on. I have a buddy in high school that was on Jeopardy.
what? Who?
Mike Goldstein, he was on like 3 years ago. He dominated his entire first and second round, came up a little short, and then lost Final Jeopardy, so he didn't win it. But like there are rules to it. Like you lock yourself out if you buzz in too quickly. That's the whole thing. Like you can't just buzz. You have to time the buzz for when they open up buzzing.
You're gonna say in the several episodes we've done on around this date that you have never prematurely answered a question.
Never.
I don't believe that.
If it's a lie, then we fight on that lie.
I think you have definitely jumped in before, Kyle.
Doesn't sound like me.
I'll go back and listen to every single Scoop.
Every episode, and you find you also tally how many interruptions there's.
I was about to say the next intern's gonna have a hell of a job to knock out his first week here.
Like we got some busy work for you. They're just sitting there like just
John.
fucking four cups of coffee.
This is not this is serious work, you know. This isn't busy work. You know, this matters.
We've all had to do busy work, either by demand or by desire. I one time took an Adderall at the tech center and just filled out MLB All-Star ballots for 3 hours.
What?
This
What
is like
does that have to do with
2010. I remember voting
What
for Brian
is that?
McCann a lot. That was busy work. It was just repetitive motions over and over and over and
That's
over and
not
over and
busy
over.
work. That's like you voluntarily doing that.
I said by demand or by desire. I
Okay,
chose it by
okay,
desire.
Okay, I missed that.
I believe he made the All-Star team that year.
Have fun segueing your way out of this one, John.
Yeah, there's nothing.
All-Star 21st in MVP voting. I had nothing to do with that. Silver Slugger that year.
I don't know. Yeah, I can't think of a great segue, but it'll probably come to me later. Anyway, as we said at the outset of the show, it's been a rough week for the Temple men's basketball program. Given the state of college basketball right now, given the state of a lot of different things, which we will get into in this podcast and the mailbag, I don't know that any of this is entirely surprising, but since we last recorded, Quante Berry, Dylan Battie, Zion Stanford, and Elijah Gray have all entered the NCAA's transfer portal. This means that as of now, and it's almost kind of useless to say this because rosters are going to be very fluid, but as of now, Adam Fisher has just 4 scholarship players on his roster who would be eligible to return in Jameel Brown, Mohamed Keita, Aiden Tobiasen, and Babatunde Duradola. Temple also has IMG point guard Cam Miles and Westtown school guard Cam Wallace committed and signed from the 2020-25 class. And there's a long way to go. The transfer portal window is open until April 22nd. That's 25 days from now. On top of that, Temple Athletics Director Arthur Johnson announced that they'll be rolling out the Competitive Excellence Fund and that it would essentially be replacing the TUFF Fund, the NIL collective that has been run on a volunteer basis by Andy Carl. An email to fans on Monday said, in part, In anticipation of the settlement, the House settlement, that is, we've consulted with Andy Carl and the TUFF Fund. Will sunset its fundraising operations effective April 7th, concentrating all new donor-supported efforts to the Office of Institutional Advancement and the OWL Club. TUFF Fund agreements with student athletes will remain active until fulfilled, and subsequent charitable activations will be held throughout the calendar year. Additional information on ways to support Temple's student athletes moving forward will follow shortly. We are extremely grateful for Andy's leadership over the past 3 years. His passion and commitment have been unwavering. In addition, we are also very appreciative of the individuals and organizations that have contributed to the TUFF Fund over the years. Kyle, how do you think that news was received this week?
Like a lead balloon is how I would describe it. I mean, I think it's a lot of words. I think if you're an optimist, you think, okay, well, this is a new opportunity and this needs to be university led and it can't be a one-man show and blah blah. And there are more FTEs in the OWL Club than there ever were in the TUFF Fund, and so on and so forth. I think most people are just a little bit scorned and hesitant to believe that this all of a sudden means that donations are going to start flying in. So I think I'll just say this. When 2 days later or whatever after this, when the official Temple Owls Twitter account tweeted out the new NIL exchange and this is how you can donate your money and this is where it goes and so forth, just read the responses to those Twitter posts, to those tweets, because they are heavily negative is how I will say it.
Yeah. So we're really kind of just setting the stage here. We're really just going to talk more men's hoops in the mailbag because we could get to a lot of this now, but the mailbag is really going to drive a lot of the conversation this week. So we will save that for the mailbag. Just wanted to set the table there. Obviously, lots of stuff to get to with the portal, the roster, fundraising, everything in between. Let's talk some spring football here because that has also been quite busy this week. Not a shortage of things to talk about. As you guys know, we've talked about this in previous episodes. There's media availability on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We've been moving forward with our Spring Forward preview series and latest story there. Jason did one on the wide receivers. Now, the wideouts haven't talked yet. Roy Roundtree was scheduled to speak last Saturday, I believe. And
so.
they pushed that back. So we haven't talked to the wideouts yet. I haven't talked to Roy Roundtree, but we're almost all the way through the position previews and the position, analyzing the positions and talking about, what could come in the portal and so on and so forth. But the interesting news this week on Tuesday, and I'm kicking myself for not following up more on this, but Casey Keeler said that Penn State reached out about a potential joint practice. Now, again, that wouldn't happen until next year. Kyle and I were talking about this earlier this morning. It's like right now you can't legally do that. Like Fran Brown is trying to do that with Syracuse and Colorado with Deion Sanders, but it's not anything that I asked about that day on Tuesday. It was really just right. I think it was just Ryan and Colin and I over at the facility, and it started with a question about who looked good in the scrimmage on Saturday. And I mean this as a compliment to Casey. You don't have to ask him too many questions because he's a veteran. He's been doing this for a long time, and we started asking about who looked good in the scrimmage, and then he kind of started evolving, and we'll play this clip here in a second and talking about I don't like to pay too many compliments because you never know who you're going to talk up and who you might lose in the portal. But yeah, he ended up saying this thing about Penn State reaching out. I think the Penn State On 3 site picked it up. The Daily Collegian picked up on it. He also said this will likely be the last year the Temple does a spring game. So not surprising. That's not really surprising news, but we'll play this clip for you here because this really just started with me asking who looked good in the scrimmage on Saturday, and you can see how it kind of evolves into that. And he starts talking about the guys on the defensive line, and then he stops short and said, I don't want to name too many names because of the portal. So who else flashed in the scrimmage on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I think Evan keeps on getting better all the time. Duck had some really good runs. He's really conscious of the fact that, we think he needs to finish off runs, and he's really been finishing off runs, kind of showing us that he has a little bit more speed than maybe people want to give him that. Defensive line, I mean, there's just a bunch of animals up there. There's some really good players up there. So there's like 4 or 5 of them playing really well. But, all in all, like I said, I don't like to point out, too many guys who live in the world of the portal. Mm-hmm. And, you start talking about, that's why guys aren't having spring games. Mm-hmm. They really do not want their guys exposed to to the possibility of someone taking them. So that's why sometimes you'll be surprised. Coaches will get a little evasive. Penn State reached out, and we're talking about possibly doing something like Syracuse and Colorado are doing. And I'm thinking to myself, do I really want my guys out there? I think I have some good players. And so that's kind of where we are now. It gets a little bit more secretive, this time of year when, the portal's opening up.
Even in the past, coaches would be obviously very vanilla with their spring games. You want to keep everybody healthy. You don't want to show much. Is that even just even more so the case now? Where you
Absolutely. The spring game is really about getting, we're going to have a golf outing Friday, and we're going to have the spring game Saturday. And it's about getting the alums out here and just, kind of having some camaraderie. A lot of pride in this place from those guys who played in the past. And, I just want them to know that they built this place. I'm just locking it up at night, and I just want them to know that we want them back and we want them to be part of this whole thing. The spring game really has become more of a ceremonial, I remember in the day when we keep score and it would go down to the last play and, it was 100+ snaps of, full contact. You don't do that anymore, and for a number of reasons. Also, I think as I've evolved, I have come to the conclusion that, less is more. And so we hit very little. We tackle to the ground, I bet 20 snaps on Saturday. And we'll probably do the same, maybe a hair more this Saturday. And then, same thing with the spring game. There will be a component that's going to be game-like, hey, we're going to have a kickoff return, live up until the tackle. So we'll get live blocking. And we'll go through some of those kind of things, some special teams kind of stuff. But, the actual scrimmage and tackle to the ground, it might be 25, 30 snaps, and then we'll go thud from the rest of it. So it's become more ceremonial. I think this will be the last spring game for college football. I think we're going to move more to a pro model, more OTAs and those kind of things. If you think about it, because of the portal, your roster is really not all together until June. Yeah. So why not do some more things in June with the guys in terms of OTAs and those kind of things versus the time you're spending in the spring. Make the spring more conditioning and walkthroughs and those kind of things. So, again, I think you'll see we're going to an NFL model. I think you'll see us go to an NFL model in a lot of ways.
So interesting stuff there. I think that if this did become a thing next year where joint practices are legal and Temple and Penn State could hold a joint practice, I think it's, on one hand, James Franklin, if he's still the coach at Penn State next year, could be getting a preview of maybe I'll pluck this guy from the portal from Temple, or maybe Casey Keeler is worried about depth and all that stuff. But I think it kind of speaks to what we were getting questions about before, where people were saying, is there going to be a spring game this year? Yes, there's going to be a spring game this year, but you hear Casey Keeler there talking about they're going toward an NFL model, and now it might make more sense to just do a lot of walkthrough stuff in the spring, and why have a showcase game when the roster you have in April may not look as much as what it's going to look like in August and September. So some interesting stuff there. Landon Morris has left the team again. So that's the second time in 4 months, right, Ryan? Yeah. So on Tuesday, we saw Reese Clark back with the tight ends and taking some snaps there. Again, if you read Jay's story, we talked about how Reese Clark might be a fresh face in the receiver room because he has more of a receiver's body, but the tight end position looks pretty good because Ryder Cush has been seeing a lot of reps there with what we could reasonably assume might be the first team. Again, nothing's written in stone there, but Ryder Cush has looked good. Pierre Clark has looked good. Daniel Evert has looked good. Who am I forgetting at tight end? I'm forgetting somebody else.
No, that's it. There's only 3 scholarship guys.
Okay. All right. So it's been a position of strength for them, but a couple other news and notes to pass along. Last Saturday, Kevin Terry told me that the team's getting a new locker room. That's going to be at the Edberger-Holson Hall complex. So it's my understanding that they're going to kind of refurbish and tweak some things, and then prior to next season, they're going to completely overhaul the locker room over there. That came out of a conversation last Saturday when we were talking to Kevin Terry, Grayson Maines. So interesting news there.
Sorry, real quick, to put a timeline on that, I think when they revealed this locker room, I interviewed Jalen Fitzpatrick in it. So that's how long ago this locker room.
Wow.
I think it's been 13 years since
Jalen Fitzpatrick, number 5 out of Harrisburg High School, right?
Harrisburg, yeah. And then they ran him initially as a wildcat situation because he was a high school quarterback, and then he became a pretty good wideout.
Yeah, nice career at Temple, right?
Yeah. I think so. I think he kind of was in like that overlap of. I feel like his last year was like Rule's second year.
Yeah. On Saturday, so you might be listening to this Friday night, Saturday morning. Running backs coach Andrew Pearson. I'm assuming Jay Ducker and Jaquez Smith are going to be talking. Keep in mind that's a position where Ducker and Smith are really the only two healthy scholarship backs in spring ball right now. DeCarlos Young and Terez Worthy are both hurt. So it's Ducker, Smith, and two walk-ons, Jordan Miller and Darius Morant, getting snaps right now. So we're more than halfway through spring ball. A lot more to report on. Again, we're going to talk a lot of spring ball in the mailbag right now. In terms of football recruiting, we're going to continue to be your best source for Temple football recruiting. Kyle has some scoop that he has posted on the message board. If you're an owlscoop.com subscriber, you're going to know the latest information about who's visiting this weekend, who's visiting next week. Just in terms of a recruiting note and a roster note, Temple added UMass linebacker Jalen Stewart via the portal. He announced Wednesday, Kyle? Was it Wednesday or was it yesterday?
Well, I want to say Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was coached there by Keith Dudzinski, UMass's former defensive coordinator, who is now at Temple as Casey Keeler's linebackers coach. Kyle, what's the impact here? I mean, I think they got a lot better in the linebacker room by adding this guy.
Oh, I think so for sure. I think at the very least you really increased like the depth and the floor of that position. But like I think you brought in a potential starter pretty late in the process. And to be honest, I don't know all the behind the scenes talks between the staff and that player, but it seems like it happened pretty seamlessly. I mean, he's the second UMass starter to follow Keith Dudzinski, in addition to Aaron Beckwith, the defensive tackle. But this is a guy that PFF, if you're a pro football focused guy, said was UMass's best defensive player. He had 1.5 sacks against Mississippi State. He had 14 tackles against Northern Illinois. He's from Bethlehem, so he's coming right around the corner, kind of a bit of a homecoming for him. He's a guy that took advantage of an interesting story where you saw with Diego Pavilla down at Vanderbilt suing the NCAA, saying NJCAA stuff shouldn't count towards my NCAA eligibility. That opened up the door for guys like Jalen Stewart, Beto Suike to have an extra year of eligibility while they figure these things out. So I think it's a pretty significant late addition to the spring. Not that he's here now, but it kind of helps solidify that position as they go into this next portal season.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, we've got a lot more recruiting information on our football board for subscribers. Definitely want to check that out. A couple of weeks ago, Temple had a lot of prominent visitors in from the 2026 and 2027 classes, a lot from North Jersey, including a couple of players from Don Bosco Prep, one of them being Rhett Morris. He is an interior offensive lineman, likely a center at the next level. He's a former Wake Forest commit. Had the chance to talk to Rhett. His father, Charlie Morris, actually went to junior high school, and college with Charlie. He's a Downingtown guy, played center at Temple, played with Henry Burris, played on some of those Big East teams, and had the chance to talk to Rhett about his recruitment. Temple's in the mix. His recruitment is still very much open at this point. He's got Pitt in the mix. He's got Virginia Tech. He's got West Virginia. Penn State is recruiting him. I don't think that they've offered yet, but one of the better players in the 2026 class. I think Rivals has him ranked as the 25th overall player in the state of New Jersey. So if you are an owlscoop.com subscriber, you had the chance to read that story a few days ago. Really enjoyed talking to Rhett. Overcame a significant obstacle in his life, beat I guess with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma when he was a freshman in high school. It's 2 players on the roster now who are beating that in terms. Well, sorry, Rhett, you're not at Temple yet. I don't. Your recruitment is open, but I'm thinking of Anthony Chickett. Colin's got a story coming out on Anthony Chickett soon in the Temple News about just what he's been through. But yeah, Rhett fought through this and battled this when he was a freshman in high school and beat it, and it's in the past now. Really enjoyed talking to him. You can check that story out if you're an OwlScoop subscriber. But we're going to play a clip here. And again, this is Rhett talking about his visit to Temple a couple weekends ago. It was not an official visit, was just in for practice, got to meet Casey Keeler, got to meet Al Johnson, the offensive line coach. And in the story, if you read it, he talks about his recruitment being open, a lot of other schools that are in the mix. But this is his take on his visit to Temple and the visit to Temple, taking in practice and all that good stuff. So you'll hear from Rhett Morris from Don Bosco Prep, and then we will have more for you on the other side as we start jumping into the mailbag.
It was awesome. It was great to meet Coach Keeler and Coach Johnson. We got to talk a little bit, and it was awesome having my dad there because obviously he's played there. And it was just great to be back on campus. It was, I want to say that was my third time at like a Temple football visit.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've been there like all my life when I was little, but it was just great to be back and meet all the coaches and see how the practice went. It was awesome.
You know, obviously you've got a ton of schools recruiting you. What's their pitch to you? What do they say to you? I know it's not an official visit. You're there for spring ball, but what did they talk to you about?
Really just how they like kind of want to be high on like the high school recruiting, not like they're not big portal guys. Obviously, they want to build the foundation of the program, build that winning culture, and that's really big to me because I know I could probably definitely go in there and start sooner rather than later, and that's something I'd love to do.
What was your conversation like with Al Johnson? I mean, he played at Wisconsin. He played in the NFL for a little while, and he was a big part of what Montana State did in the FCS championship game this year. Did you get a chance to catch up with him a lot, or was it more like a quick conversation?
It was a brief conversation. Yeah. We talked before practice started, and we were just talking about Temple in general, just saying how great it was to meet because we haven't met in person yet. But he was just talking about how cool he thought the campus was because he's never been there, obviously, and how it stuck out to him. Just talked a little bit of just football talk, and I got to watch the Indy period, which I personally like to watch the most, see like all the technique of the O-linemen, and that was my favorite part of practice is watching the O-line do their thing. So we just briefly talked. It was good though. Yeah. Had a great conversation.
Rhett, when you eventually make your college decision, what's going to be most important to you? What are you looking for in a school?
What I'm looking for in a school is high-level coaching, a great family atmosphere. Obviously, Temple definitely has that, being that my dad played there, and great academics and great football.
Two things for that. One, other than you talking about how you went to school with a father's recruit, do you know how else you dated yourself in that?
No, but I'm sure you're going to tell me.
Everyone on this call, did you go to a junior high school?
No.
Nope. Everyone went to a middle school? Did everyone go to a middle school? Yeah. Junior high, very, very old term. We don't use that anymore.
Jay was knocking things down at Milton Hershey School.
Yeah, that's
I still went to a middle school. I never called it a junior high school.
I didn't know you went to Milton Hershey.
Yeah.
Not to make a full thing, my A-push teacher, who I despised, also went to Milton Hershey. So, not to bring this together.
Do you blame you getting a 2 on the A-push exam on your teacher?
No, like it was for sure like I'm a grown man, I can take responsibility for my own actions. Like it was 100% my fault, but like he didn't help. He was a bit of a tool.
Maybe this is me further dating myself. I don't know that I know what an A-push exam is.
It's just like an AP test, like an advanced placement test. It's on a scale of 1 to 5. Typically, if you get like a 4 or 5, you can use that towards college credit. Some schools accept 3s. I got a 2, so I was not able to apply my AP U.S. History class test at the end of the year, which you have to pay for. Is it through the Princeton Review? Who administers the AP exams? I forget. Whoever it is, was not able to apply that towards college credits. 2. John, this question is exclusively for you. If anybody else has answers to this, I would be shocked. Charlie Morris's last game at Temple was against Syracuse in 1998. Can you name his quarterback and his running back in that game?
Evan Harvey was his quarterback?
Nope.
Pat Bonner?
Nope.
Mike McGann?
Nope. You're missing like the good one from that.
Was it Henry? Was it still Henry?
No, that's Henry like 4 years later. This guy was the starter in 1999. He started through 2000.
Walter Washington?
Devin Scott.
Oh, Devin Scott, number 17. Devin Scott.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the running back, if you can't guess this, I have a pretty obvious hint.
Sonardo Sharps?
No.
Stacey Mack?
No. His son played for Kansas.
Oh, Marco Jackson.
Marco Jackson.
Wow.
Well, throwbacks.
Wow.
But yeah, 1998, that's how long ago that was.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this too, again, like Rhett's recruitment is open. was awesome to talk to him. Charlie's a great dude. I mean, I'm a little biased I don't want to, give the indication that Charlie and I see each other like multiple times a year. I get to see him every few years if he comes to campus, but he's awesome. He was a terrific player at Temple, played 7 years in the Arena League. Awesome player, great
You guys
person.
used to go to Ron's schoolhouse together?
I don't think we did. No, no, but
I love Ron's schoolhouse.
yeah, I think it was called Ron Schoolhouse. When
Yeah,
we
now
were
it's just Ron's.
cool. So yeah, Charlie hurt, and Charlie, my apologies if I'm getting this incorrect. Charlie hurt his knee in the Thanksgiving Day game against Coatesville. I think he was supposed to go to Virginia Tech and then ended up at Temple. He sat out a year, ended up at Temple, and was a center. Was a very, very good player in the Big East, and his son is following in his footsteps. Like I said, Rhett's got a lot of high major offers and is playing some really good football. Don Bosco Prep. They went 8-4 last year, and they're trying to win a state title this coming season. So it was really cool to talk to him. So again, one of several good players from North Jersey that Temple's in the mix with. So again, want to alert you guys to the fact that the latest and best and most accurate football recruiting information is up on our football message board right now. So don't miss it. That's going to be ongoing. Let's jump into the mailbag each week. Mike Greenspan of Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers as a tip to either keep you safe on the roads, keep you safe when you're doing your taxes. He's a voice of reason when you're upset about Temple sports. He's been chiming in with a little bit of everything. We love Mike. Here is his weekly tip, and then we will jump into the mailbag.
One of the most common types of cases that we find as personal injury lawyers is the rear end collision. And you know what the cause of almost every rear end collision is? Tailgating. Think about it. The next time you're driving to or from work, watch the people in front of you. Look at how many people climb right up to the back of the person in front of them because they're impatient or just not paying attention. That's when crashes happen, and they're so easily preventable. So, the next time you're in the car, make sure you put some good distance between the nose of your vehicle and the rear of the vehicle in front. You can never know when they're going to suddenly slam on the brakes because of an animal or for whatever other reason, and you don't want to need us. Take care and be safe out there.
All right, we're going to jump into the mailbag here because we have a lot of questions to get to. Y'all have a lot of stuff on your minds, which we completely understand. So first question here in the mailbag, it's a two-parter from Owls72, our friend Glenn on Twitter. As much as we are bummed out that Zion Stanford, and Dylan Battie are gone, but Zion seems to get lost when he's the third option, and Battie hardly saw the floor, parentheses, he should have played more. Should we see this as better players are coming, or still be depressed that we can't retain rising players? You can be depressed that they can't retain rising players because Zion Stanford is certainly a loss. Dylan Battie is certainly a loss. I'm going to interject here, and this might be the first of a few times that I say this during the podcast. I don't want anybody to be misled here, and I've just talked to enough people to know this. If Dylan Battie played more, all that would end up happening is that his NIL agent would be asking for more money. And I don't mean that as a knock on Dylan. It's just how things are in 2025 right now. I don't know that there's any world where if Adam Fisher had started Dylan Battie, played him 40 minutes a game, that Dylan Battie and Derek Battie and their agent would be coming to him and saying, thank you so much. We are definitely coming back. We're not going to talk to any other programs. The portal, legally or illegally, is always open. So I just don't, people are entitled to their opinions, but people can say, well, maybe Fish should have played him a few more minutes here, a few more minutes there. We had someone on our message board kind of implying like, oh, well, down the stretch, Steve Settle was getting a lot of minutes. That's because Steve Settle was arguably their best player down the stretch, just as much as Zion Stanford. So should we see this as better players coming, or be depressed that we can't retain rising players? You'd be sad that they lost Zion Stanford in the portal. We're going to get more into this, but I kind of, in this question number one here, Glenn, I'm going to weigh in on the fact that even if you feel like you should have played more, we might still be in this same situation. Question number two, not seeing these practices. So Glenn, shifting over to football here. What is the vibe so far? What additional moves can be made to the roster aside from the freshmen? And when can they still add from the portal? So the next portal window is April 14th to 25th, right?
They can add from the portal whenever,
yeah.
Right? Like we just saw that. They just added Jalen Stewart from UMass. Like they can add from the portal whenever. the next portal window starts April 16th for players to leave from Temple and players to leave from other places.
Yeah. And again, feel free to chime in on this, guys, because you've been down there, you've been part of our spring football coverage. I think the vibe is like, look, they've gone 3-9 for the last 4 years. Anything that's new is going to be more exciting and more optimistic. The vibe is you've got a head coach who knows what he's doing and a staff that appears to make sense. Again, tomorrow we're going to be talking to Andrew Pierce, who's a respected running backs coach, has local recruiting ties. I think it's been a good vibe. And the portal, I don't know, Jason made this point in his receiver story, like, yeah, Casey hasn't really talked a ton about the wide receivers yet. The wide receivers haven't spoken yet, but that doesn't mean that they're immune to portal help. I think there's not a single position on the roster where they're not going to look to upgrade. Again, you'll get an indication of that if you are an OwlScoop subscriber and you look at Kyle's latest recruiting information. You can see where they're looking to potentially add. I don't know, maybe the only two positions I can think of where they may not add are kicker and punter, right? Otherwise, I think everything else is pretty much on the table.
Yeah.
Unless Dante Atten decides he's going to leave, but who knows?
Sure. I mean, I would also think that maybe linebackers short up now with Jalen Stewart and Eric Stewart coming back, and you had Willie Love, and you had Ty Davis. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if they had a guy there, but like I don't think that's as much of a pressing need. They're also not made out of scholarships. Like right now, they have like 8 open scholarships. I'm sure that number will go to 15 or something after the spring. But it's not like they're sitting on like they only need to rebuild an entire roster. So yeah, I would think. And I think that kind of segues into the next question. Is I don't think any position is really
no. And Glenn's third and final question here is Evan Simon the guy? Maybe, but there's going to be. I mean, Casey has said like we're going to add another quarterback, and I don't know that he said this, but they're not going to be looking for depth. I think they're going to absolutely be bringing in somebody who can compete with Evan Simon.
Sure, and I think a lot of that's not necessarily a slight against Evan Simon,
No,
right? Like I think a lot of that is because Evan Simon's a redshirt senior. So like even if Evan Simon does just really take firm control of this and takes over and all this, I think you want to bring that other guy in to whether he plays in packages or whether he's just kind of the guy in waiting. Like I don't think they want to get into that habit of like we're looking for a new guy every December, January, February. So maybe you bring in a guy who's like a redshirt sophomore or a freshman that's behind somebody on the depth chart. But yeah, I think to answer the initial question, like I think Evan Simon is the guy on the roster right now. Yeah. Like I think that's probably a pretty fair assessment at this point in spring ball, but yeah, I don't think that room's going to look the same in 4 months.
No. Next question here. We're going to start zipping through. We've got a ton to get to. And again, appreciate all the mailbag questions, a lot of them this week. Jack Orlando on Twitter. Do you have any doubts about the Big Five happening next year with a new Nova coach coming in? I'd imagine whoever it is won't be thrilled with likely playing at LaSalle in a pod game. I mean, it's the Kevin Willard thing. Can we just make this official?
I'm surprised it didn't break last night after they lost that he was coming.
Yeah.
The Inquirer reported in December that the Big Five Classic is coming. Yeah, this isn't. I know a lot of times,
and the pods are going to be different, or is now.
Yeah, the
pods would be in the same pod.
Temple, Nova, LaSalle, and then Penn, Drexel, St. Joe's.
Yeah.
So with all the turmoil at Penn and Drexel, St. Joe's is going to cakewalk to the championship game for 4 straight years. No, I think that's like a level high. I think it's not the same as like a regular out of conference game where it's like, okay, is the Nova Monmouth game going to still happen? Kevin Willard doesn't want to play that. I think these things happen at a higher level.
Yeah. Next question here is from the screen name Action323 from our message board. How have Eric King and Jackson Pruitt looked for the offensive line? There were 2 guys who I think with some good coaching can be good for us. They had a couple bright spots. Also, where's Evan Daly? Evan Daly has left the program. I don't know that we actually dropped that information on the board, but if we did not,
I put it if you religiously refresh the OwlScoop scholarship board thread, it was put on there. But no, I don't think we made that like a standalone thing.
Yeah, so Evan Daly has left. I think we've said this. All the practices have been open. We've been at every single one, whether it's been myself or Ryan, Colin, Johnny's been down there. Eric King, I mean, if this is stupid to say because the season's not starting tomorrow. If the season we're starting tomorrow, I think Eric King is your starting left guard and Jackson Pruitt's your starting right guard or maybe vice versa. But there's going to be more competition there. I think that Casey Keeler has said multiple times, hey, the offensive line is really coming along, but I think that there's a desire there to continue to upgrade, add more depth, add more numbers, add more competition. I don't think that these guys by any means have been like overwhelmed or have been lapped by a new coach, a new head coach, a new position coach, and Al Johnson. So I think they look pretty solid, but they're going to have competition after April.
I will say I have not seen them take a single snap. I have spoken to two people that have spoken to people or have seen things, and the phrase I have heard is pleasantly surprised. That like the offensive line has performed better than what the staff expected maybe at this point. And
yeah,
which makes their job easier. It makes it, instead of completely revamping everything, you can kind of plug in additions. Johnny wants to put on pads. Like, he is welcome.
You know, I did have a great conversation with Casey Keeler and Clayton Barnes. You know, I've talked with them a little bit about it. It's something that we're working with.
I mean, look, we might have just spoiled the cherry and white day halftime surprise when Johnny comes out and tries to catch a touchdown or play offensive line.
That would be awesome.
They did that in 2018. They made Kevin Kopp run a route.
Oh God!
And catch a touchdown.
I need Johnny on the basketball court before we get to that. He's been dodging his 1v1, so.
I have not.
Yeah, wasn't this supposed to happen since the last time I was on? Weren't you guys supposed to play some basketball? No? I could have sworn there was like a TTN game, and then you guys were
waiting.
1v1.
I'm waiting for Jay to let me know when and where, and then I'll 1v1 him.
I'm ready whenever. Listen. We can meet at the Pearson McGonigal right after this.
I got a haircut. I got a haircut after this. After the haircut, sure.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say you couldn't play because you just got a haircut. Like, I just got a haircut. So.
No.
I'll be waiting for you. You going to Diamond Cuts?
I am. Yes.
I'll be waiting right for you to finish, and we'll walk over to Pearson together.
Tell Jay and Matt I said hello. I'll be there in a couple.
One of those like videos where you see somebody wield the like they wield the basketball hoop, and then they try to get somebody to like shoot like a celeb shot. Like, bring that outside Diamond Cuts just to hear what Coach.
I'm going to play this clip here because this is Al Johnson, Temple's new offensive line coach, talking about his coaching philosophy. So last Saturday, Kevin Terry, who remarkably said by the end of last season he was playing at 245 pounds, which is borderline alarming. It's not uncommon for players to kind of atrophy and lose some weight during the season, but he was playing at 245 last year. It's really light. He's back up to, I think he said 265, 270, still has some weight to put on. Talked to Kevin Terry, talked to Grayson Maines. Grayson Maines has been very much limited this spring at center. But they talked about how Al Johnson has been in their shoes as a former Wisconsin offensive lineman, as a former Cowboys offensive lineman. This is a guy who once snapped and blocked for Tony Romo. And he talks here about, yes, I've been in their shoes, but I don't just walk around and assume that because I played in the NFL that's going to give me instant credibility of my guys. So I wanted to play this clip for you guys so you can get a sense of who Al Johnson is, and I'm sure we'll talk to him more in the future, but I thought we would add in this clip here in the mailbag.
I can't remember if it was Kevin or Grayson just in here. He's like, he's been in our shoes. Do they ask you about just your time in the league and what that means to him?
You know, I think in general they do. But I want to tell them, and I try to tell them, like, that doesn't make me a good or a bad coach. Mm-hmm. But what it does is I've been in your shoes. Mm-hmm. I get. Listen, not one of them wanted to put the Donjoys on today. Okay, I promise you. They didn't want to put the Donjoys on, all right? But they have to put the Donjoys. So it's kind of that understanding part of it. Like, listen, I've been there. But for me, then I tell them, okay, I know you don't want to do X, Y, and Z, but I promise you, if you do this the right way and you do it consistently, you will become a better football player. And then that's, I think, where they start to understand, okay, you know, this is for my benefit. Mm-hmm. And I try to do a good job of explaining, listen, it all has to work together. So what I'm asking you to do helps the whole play, helps the running backs, helps the quarterbacks, helps the tight end, and what helps all them helps us win football games. And I think I try to relate that way more than I try to say, well, you have to listen to me because I played in the NFL. Right. I don't do that because I think that's stupid. Mm-hmm. What I've done doesn't make me, as a player, make me a good football coach. Mm-hmm. Me, I'm trying to say, how do I take where you're at, because I got to know them, I watched all the film, and how do I make you better within the system that we are trying to do to win football games?
So moving along here, the next screen name is Santana25 from our football message board. How are the defensive backs looking? How are the freshmen? Ryan, Colin, definitely feel free to chime in here. Like, Beniswake looks like he's running with the ones a lot. Jet White, Ryan, I think we've seen him running with the first team as well.
He hasn't really been running with like the first team. They have subbed him in a lot, and he's gone on against like a lot of like players that we can assume are like number one offense. Like he's lined up on like Jamar Taylor a lot and John Adams. Just like because of how they sub out the defense, it's not like I can't really get a grasp of if that's the number one defense. It has gone on a lot though.
Yeah, that's fair. Brian Smith, when we talked to him a couple weekends ago, talked about Avery Powell transferring his nickel versatility. So he's a safety, but a guy that can slip up in coverage. So it sounds like the coaches are fairly pleased with them. But again, I would not be surprised to see them add some depth there too as well. Moving on to the next question, Temple Tough 75 on Twitter. Does Temple Athletics plan on making any additional hires / upgrading the department to account for bringing NIL in-house? I certainly hope so. Their former head fundraising person in athletics is no longer with the university, so they need to. And I'm not saying that to be snarky. There's no tone intended here, but if they want to raise money and they want to be competitive and they want to be able to spend, I certainly hope so.
Sorry, I would agree with that from like you need to bring in like a director or whatever on the list. But like I feel like the Owl Club has had a lot of FTEs for a long time.
Yes.
So
this one comes from Twitter. The handle is stupid DGA.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Well, here's another Lynn Greer question. Lynn Greer, what did he end up doing to get suspended, and thoughts on his actions with his suspensions with his dad on the staff and following his dad's legacy at Temple? I'm going to do my best here to explain this. I doubt that Lynn Greer III or Lynn Greer II will go on the record about this. Johnny, you tried, when Lynn Greer III was suspended indefinitely. Look, I'll say this again for those of you who don't know. Lynn's 9-game suspension at the beginning of the season had nothing to do with anything he had done at Temple. It was due to an NCAA rules violation that happened at his previous institution at St. Joe's. This came from just, I think, a level of dissatisfaction with playing time that started to kind of materialize during the Buffalo game, manifested itself at ECU, and it went from there. In terms of following in his dad's legacy at Temple, I wish nothing but the best for the Greer family. Lynn Greer II is a fantastic human being. His parents are incredible. His sister is incredible. Again, standard John DeCarlo disclaimer. Lynn Greer III was never anything other than nice to me. I wish him the best. Lynn Greer III is a different player and different person than his dad. And maybe he's always been unfairly compared to him. But, Lynn reached the NBA. Lynn II reached the NBA. He was a top 5, top 10 player in Temple history. Lynn Greer III is not that type of player. He was a very solid college basketball player, but that's what happened. Wish Lynn III the best. I would imagine he's going to try to pursue a playing career overseas, but don't have much to add other than that. Didn't work out. Temple certainly could have used him, but it did not work out.
Do you think our listeners have picked up on the standard John hedging comment?
I would hope so.
He's a nice guy, but like, or is there nothing? I wonder if that's just like too inside baseball, or if others have picked up on it.
I would think people.
No, I mean this. Like, I've never had anything but positive interactions with Lynn Greer III, but clearly didn't work out.
I think that's a like fundamental difference between you and I, and this is a positive for you and a negative for me. Is I think I enter interactions with people of like neutral and like you have to prove to me that you're a good guy or something like this. I feel like you give people the benefit of the doubt of like, this guy's a nice guy. He's never done anything but mean to me, so he must be a nice guy. And I enter more lower than you. You're an optimist.
That's fair. My wife said that too. So
you expect Lucy to keep the football down, and I don't.
Next question here comes from Detroit Owl. This is from our message board. Is what's going on with the basketball program hurting football recruiting?
No,
not at all.
Unless they are recruiting a player that can play both.
Yeah.
Maybe if they're trying.
That would be awesome.
I mean, it's been, who was the guy that they took the center on Temple basketball? They made an offensive lineman or defensive lineman for.
Nehemiah Ingram?
Nehemiah Ingram played Temple football for a smidge. I mean, you see it sometimes. I saw like a video or a TikTok the other day of all like the like really famous people that played both sports that you're like, oh, I forgot. Like I forgot that Donovan McNabb was the backup point guard in Syracuse. Tony Gonzalez, obviously Antonio Gates. A lot of tight ends did it.
Randy Moss, didn't Randy Moss play some football?
I don't think he actually played at Marshall though.
Played in high school, was really good, right?
Yeah. Oh, they're all great athletes in high school, right? They're all like both multiple guys, but
Yeah.
yeah. But no, this does not impact when they're. I can guarantee you that if I spoke to any football recruit that's been on campus in the last 2 weeks, they have no idea that Dylan Battie just left the basketball team.
Yeah. Our friend Homie Wow, another appearance on Twitter from the
I'm
Mailbag.
tempted every time. Every time I'm tempted to do it.
Go ahead, do it.
No, I'm not going to. We have another Owen Wilson reference later on in the mailbag.
Hey, Johnny, any Owen Wilson?
Homie, wow.
There we go.
No, but I do want to mention that I was disappointed that when Johnny did Vince Vaughn earlier on Around the State, he didn't mention Dodgeball. Best Vince Vaughn movie, and no one can change my mind.
I got to give one hint, and then they guessed it. What am I supposed to do?
I wonder if that's generational too, because maybe because the age I was, but when Wedding Crashers came out, it was like life altering too. Like
I didn't want to use Wedding Crashers or Dodgeball.
No. I'm saying to Jay's point of it being the best Vince Vaughn movie. Dodgeball.
Oh, okay.
Like I think in my mind, Wedding Crashers is like the best Vince Vaughn movie.
Yeah, I don't dislike Dodgeball. It's very, very funny.
I think they're both like 1A, 1B, and I don't know which is which.
I remember like anticipation for Wedding Crashers. You're gonna think I'm lying. I remember like seeing the trailer for Wedding Crashers when it came out before, and people being like, "Holy crap, this movie's gonna be awesome!" Like I remember anticipation for it, and they lived up to it.
I haven't seen Wedding Crashers in a couple years, so that's what like knocks it down for me. But it's definitely on my rewatch list. But I've seen Dodgeball more recently, and there's more iconic moments. Like there's just like the Cobras and like their dance into the Dodgeball arena, or just no one makes me bleed my own blood. Like to me, that's just more iconic.
Yeah, I mean, I like Dodgeball, but yeah, I think Wedding Crashers reminds me of like that golden era of like big cinema comedy when like everything was coming out. Like people actually made comedies that went to the movies.
He was even great in Couples Retreat, where he's like, "We got to stick together here and not point fingers. You're a problem.
You're a problem.
Real problem." I love that part. Anyway, Homie Wow on Twitter. Why does Temple always do the bare minimum with NIL? Basketball is screwed. You could say that they're behind in NIL. You could say that they're probably, in the bottom half of the American Athletic Conference in terms of where their NIL allotment was coming in. Is basketball screwed?
I think we're gonna get into that.
Yeah, they're just certainly they're in a tough spot right now because they have lost players and they might lose a couple more in terms of rev share. One of the tough things now is that a lot of programs are able to double dip because they're still getting NIL, and they're going to be ahead of Temple in terms of rev share. We're just going to have to see how things go. To your question here, Homie, why does Temple always do the bare minimum with NIL? We've talked about the fact that they're behind, and they acknowledge that they were behind. They were behind their two 8 peers in Pitt and Penn State. They've acknowledged as much, and here we are. So we shall see. Our friend the Hick, multiple questions here. We're going to go super rapid fire. But these are some good questions here. First question from the Hick from our basketball message board. Will any portal players be re-recruited? Yes, there's a possibility there. I've been told by probably half dozen sources I've talked to that Adam Fisher's stance is not like it was last year. Last year, it was more so like if you're in the portal, you're in. This time around, it's more like, and this might be true of like several coaches, where it's more like a, hey, do what you need to do. But if your spot is still here and you want to come back, we would take you back. So is that going to happen? I don't know. I just don't know, because we're gonna say this more than once. A lot of what's going on right now is very much agent driven. Second question, will any administrators commit on the record about committing to a plan to revitalize Temple's athletic department? Do they see value in this as an asset to growth for the university? Does the athletic department have a target list of potential investors for rebuilding athletic resources? You'd have to ask Arthur Johnson. What is the AD's vision for the future of the department? Does his vision match that of the new president, or is it at odds? Again, you'd have to ask Arthur Johnson. I don't know beyond, he said, we want to win championships. We want to win championships. That's great. What's the plan to get there? Does the AD see portal activity as an annual inevitability? How does he envision talking to alumni, talking Al's alumni fans off the ladder? I think he meant to say off the ledge, or maybe off the ladder. I'll say this, and here's where I think I could interject with this. And if I catch some heat for this, so be it. Fans are fans. there are Eagles fans, there are Phillies fans, like fans that the fan is a derivative of the word fanatical. Totally get it. If I were Arthur Johnson, if I were this athletic department, I'm not saying it's a cure-all. I would be doing monthly, and I don't think this is the first time that we've talked about this. I would be doing monthly town halls, visits in the tri-state area, southeastern PA, South Jersey, Delaware County, Montgomery County, to educate fans about what is truly going on in the world of college athletics in 2025. You don't have to like rev share, you don't have to like NIL, but just based on what I see on social media, based on what I see in both Facebook groups, and again, I'm not trying to make fun of your fandom. If you love your school, you appreciate your school, great. But there are a lot of fans in this fan base who are not in touch with reality about how things are. One fan had said, it's about culture. It's about, yeah, no kidding, but it's about money. It is about money in 2025. Like, you're going to talk to me about the culture. I mean, they got their butts kicked by UAB last March. And then that night, a damaging gambling story comes out. That whole season could have gone down the toilet right then and there. They beat UTSA. Then they go to the conference championship game. You're going to tell me the culture was bad? That wasn't easy. This year, they lose Jamal Mashburn Jr. It was not the season that they wanted. They win 3 games at the end of the season. You're going to tell me the culture was bad? No, it's about money and resources, money and resources, money and resources. And again, you don't have to love all of that, but I think that people are still learning about how heavily agents are involved, how much money is involved, and how important it is to have a plan and to have resources and to have a path forward. And I think that a lot of fans are truly just kind of out to lunch on that. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but I, in all seriousness, if I were the athletic department, I would try to be meeting fans on where they are and saying, hey, this is what's really going on right now. Agents are involved. There's a lot to it. So that's what I would do. Does Adam Fisher have a target list that includes high school athletes who might get lost in the portal frenzy? I'm sure he does. But again, keep in mind that most of the best high school players are typically off the board in the fall. Why are TU players leaving? Money. 9 times out of 10, it's money. Does Coach Fisher and the AD and president have an honest dialogue about the university's responsibility to drive growth and reestablish a sustainable strategy for Temple athletics? You would have to ask them. I think that Adam Fisher has met John Fry at least once, but I don't want to speak out of school on that. Will Adam Fisher add an old head coach as an advisor to navigate waters that he may be too callow to navigate? Doubt it. I don't think Michael Huger is going anywhere. I don't know that Bobby Jordan and Chris Clark are going anywhere. We'll see. Cam Winter not on the staff anymore. I don't know if Lynn Greer is going to be coming back on the staff. Maybe there's a new staff position that comes out of that. We shall see, but I don't know. It's a good question. As of now, I would say probably not, but I don't know what a new staff position would look like. Interesting question, but I doubt that it's going to be like an old head, like an associate head coach. Michael Huger is already the associate head coach, and the next guy in the next chair over. Next question here, also from the message board. The screen name is Temple Owls alum 1620. Are you hearing similar conclusions that Temple is contributing the minimum required by the AAC and rev share? And if so, is it fair to assume university leadership is not committed to winning championships in this new environment? I can't speak to what's on the hearts and minds of Arthur Johnson and John Fry. I've talked to too many people to know that Temple is not at the top half of the American Athletic Conference in terms of rev share and NIL. I think that would probably be Memphis. I haven't seen any hard numbers. You talk to people, you do your best to source stuff, but to say that they're not committed, I think that's unfair unless we had Arthur Johnson or John Fry on this podcast. But I think that there are programs that are in better shape. There are programs in the Atlantic 10 that are in better shape. And I think sometimes there's this belief like, well, you need to concentrate on winning your conference because, and there's a question later on from our friend Pat Egan about scheduling. Well, yeah, you have to concentrate on winning your conference, but guess what? Before you can concentrate on winning your conference, you are recruiting players to try to win the conference. And guess who you're recruiting against? You're recruiting against A-10 programs. And if they have better rev share than you do, and they have better NIL support than you do, that's a challenge. So it's kind of how it all fits together. Another question to get to here from the screen named Quinn Dive 2. Is there any information on whether Babatunde Duradola, Aiden Tobiasen, and or Jameel Brown are staying or entering the portal? Nothing concrete, Quinn Dive 2. I hate to sound vague. I would just be blatantly irresponsible if I told you that they were definitely leaving. I'd be blatantly irresponsible if I told you that they were definitely coming back. This thing's got, there's still, what did I say earlier, 25 days left before the portal window closes. We got to see. I don't know. Do I think that Adam Fisher would like to keep Babatunde Duradola and Aiden Tobiasen and Jameel Brown? Absolutely. Will he be able to? We'll see. And I'll say this too. I think some fans might be saying, okay, maybe Temple's revenue share isn't $3 million, but let's say it's $2 million, or let's say it's even, and I say as low as $1 million because comparatively speaking, it is lower. But let's say you have $1 million to play with. Yeah, it's easy to say, well, like just offer Baba 250, offer Aiden 250, and then just get thrifty with the rest of your roster. But what we don't know is if other players on the roster see this guy leaving, that guy leaving, that guy leaving, that guy leaving, then they're trying to figure out, well, what's my worth? Is it better to go to another roster where I have complementary pieces around me? Again, it's agent driven. And I will say this, and I've talked to enough people to know this, these agents in the agency world where professional agents are representing pro players, their commission's like 3%. Some of these agents are asking for 10 or 20%. That's a lot of money. And so what do? To get their money, they drive up what they think the valuation is on a player. And the player's seeing 10%, 15, 20% cut off the top plus taxes. Agents are driving a lot of this. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying you have to love it or hate it, but that is what's going on. Question number 2, and then I want to float over to you guys and talk a little bit of women's hoops too. If Temple only commits to the minimum standard of revenue sharing set by the American Athletic Conference, $10 million over 3 years, and does not go beyond this, what is your opinion of Temple basketball being competitive this year and moving forward? Well, if they don't get more money, it's going to be hard for them to compete moving forward. You're going to have to really hit on every single recruit. You're going to have to hit on every portal player that you bring in and hope for the right chemistry, the right magic. It's like being a small market team. Would you rather be we'll go back to baseball on this. Would you rather be the Mets right now, or would you rather be the Pirates? Paul Skeens is great, but the Pirates haven't been relevant on a consistent basis since the late 80s, early 90s. And, they finally became a wild card team back in 2014, 2015-ish. Now I'm really getting in the weeds. But I don't think Temple's ever going to get into the SEC. They're not going to have SEC level money. They're not going to, there are advantages to being in the Big East if you're a program that doesn't have to throw money at football. But if they don't make progress in terms of more fundraising and better revenue share, yeah, it's going to be hard for them to compete. I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything that's rocket science there. Before we get into Pat's question to finish us out, and I'll do one more quick scan to see if anything else came across. So no portal movement yet officially for the women's team. But for you guys, for Johnny and Jay, you guys have covered the team as well as anybody else. If Diane Richardson asks you guys, unsolicited advice, Jason Nieves, Johnny Zwizlak, what do you think I need in the portal? What would you look for? Johnny's rubbing his hands together. What advice would you give Diane? What do you think she needs in the portal? What do you think she's going to be looking for in the portal?
I mean, I think the first thing you have to look for is forward depth, because you're losing 2 key players from your roster last year, Anissa Rivera and Amaya Oliver. You have Julissa Molina, who, in my opinion, has the potential to be an all-conference player. Had a great season last year. You got to get forward depth, and then you got to find another piece that is able to find ways to score on their own. That can, that was kind of what TR East was, but she wasn't able to do it consistently. You need someone that can consistently find ways to score on their own.
Yeah.
And I think I brought this point up maybe a couple weeks ago, and Kyle said, "Can Kayla Turner be that person?" I'm interested to see in an offense that's run through her, but I'm not confident that like if it comes down to it, I think it's possible. I think Diane Richardson needs to be on the lookout for someone that can be a scorer and can score on their own. Now, is that possible if there's little to no NIL revenue for the women's team where they don't have much money to work with? I don't know. I think
We're gonna have more than
would,
they had before, which was very little. I mean,
yes,
revenue share will benefit women's basketball. I don't think
yes,
it's gonna benefit
absolutely.
women's basketball like it will Dawn Staley or Gino Auriemma, but it's gonna be better than
It's
what
a
they had before.
Yeah, it's a
To
step up.
start.
Yeah, I think those are my two things though. I think forward depth is huge because rebounding was such a crucial thing for them down the stretch this season, and losing a Maya Oliver and Nissa Rivera is pretty big. And then just finding another scorer that's consistent, I think are my two things.
Yeah, kind of follow up on that. I completely agree with Johnny, and I think it all revolves around. And I don't want to say their half court offense was abysmal, but I think like at times when they were having their dry spouts, it was because they couldn't force turnovers on defense and get in transition, which is their primary. That's how they like to attack. That's how Diane Richardson likes to play. It's getting in transition off of turnovers and scoring buckets fast. And I think when they were forced to play a half court offense, you were seeing Tierra East take a lot of shots, take 4 shots at times if things weren't opening up, and because of that, the offense just goes dry for minutes at a time. So I think having someone who can be a proven, go out and get a bucket type of score really benefits this team, but also a solid, just like, and I think this is also what I'm looking to see is that person I think also has to kind of buy into like the culture of the team like this, where it's like everyone on the team speaks about the same thing of like their family, their culture, right? Like I think like, and I think if you're trying to be like going back to the competitive question of if you're trying to be competitive in a state where it's like you're not getting the NIL support or revenue share support that you would wish, then I think having a positive team culture and players that are bought into your scheme and what you're doing at the program means a lot in that instance. And I think that's why women's basketball was able to be, somewhat competitive this year, where they're having close games. They're trying to make these big pushes against competitive teams. So I think like that to me like also means a lot. But once again, just following up John's point, like the forward room as well, where Jalise Molina is probably your only forward on the team that's returning who had significant minutes. Felicia Jacobs showed flashes of potential, but also the development side of things for her and Kayla Turner, just what they look like next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I just saw Nirbanu's question, Jay, on Twitter here. As a non-Temple basketball fan, were there any players that entered the transfer portal that you didn't expect? Nirbanu, for me, no. Nothing surprises me anymore. There wasn't a single, Quante was the least surprising, and I would have bet I would have bet money that he was going to be the first. By the way, we didn't mention this. I mean, a couple of reporters, or at least one, and I'm so sorry I'm not properly attributing it. Quante Berry, unless the reporting is wrong, is already going to be taking an official visit to Memphis. So again, we can't. Nirvana, this is not directed at you. We shouldn't be naive anymore. No, that happened quickly. And so he's visiting Memphis. That was the least surprising one for me. But no, none of them are a surprise. Jay, Johnny, anything where you thought like, oh, I thought that, I don't know, were you surprised by Zion or any of these, or are you called just like, no, I mean, it's 2025, money is what it is, and these guys are all going to test the waters and just do what they need to do.
I don't think I was as shocked as Zion as maybe some people were. Like I know some people may have gotten swayed by his press conference after the tournament loss, but it just didn't feel. I don't want to say it wasn't genuine because that's not true. Like I have no clue if it was or wasn't. It just didn't feel like I don't know the word to describe it. It just kind of felt like bland, like what he was saying, like, oh, like I'm an upperclassman, like I gotta be there or whatever. Like I don't know. I think Dylan Batee probably, if I had to choose one of the people that have entered, I think maybe Dylan because legacy recruit.
That didn't surprise me at all. Nope.
No.
No, and I don't, and again, I don't think there was any beef between Dylan Batee and Adam Fisher. But
that's just purely if I
I'm
had
just going to tell you, and I'm going to try to be. It did not surprise me at all. Nope.
Yeah.
No, because again, a lot of this is just not surprising at all. I wouldn't say. But good question, Urbanu. Yeah, it's different world we're covering, but I think that Zion hurts if they can keep Aiden Tobias and Babatunde Duradola. That's obviously huge for them. If any of these guys decide to come back, obviously huge. But I think when you're reporting on it now, I don't know that any of it surprises you. But good question, because I think that's what like fans are asking. Like, can you predict this? Is this surprising? Is that shocking? These are all relevant questions. But right now, none of it. I wouldn't say that any of it has really surprised me. So Pat Egan, formerly of 97.5, the Fanatic, longtime Al Scoop supporter and listener on the Scoop. Two-parter here. It's back in the mailbag after a few weeks. Last week you mentioned how it's difficult to schedule out of conference opponents because of Temple's weird state. But under Fran Dunphy, you routinely saw them schedule the likes of Duke, Kansas, etc. Every year they would schedule a ranked team and usually win. Was that more of respect from opposing coaches or Dunphy? What has changed? I think we've talked about this before. Here's what's changed, Pat. Adam Fisher could try to schedule Duke and Kansas, but in this case, Duke and Kansas would be the ones looking at Temple. Temple's a buy game for them, not in the sense that like a Maryland Eastern Shore would be a buy game for Temple, and that Temple's not this obsolete program, but programs like Duke and Kansas aren't going to schedule Temple. They're not going to touch them because if they beat them, they were expected to. And then if they lose to Temple, people are going to say, why did you lose to a team like Temple whose rev share is maybe half of what yours is or less than half, especially Duke and Kansas, probably way less than half. Again, I'm speaking in broad numbers there. That's the tough spot that they're in. And I think that Tim Pernetti, as the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, might start having to have conversations with his teams about scheduling and saying, ultimately, you can do what you want to do. But like, you see, it's tough. These schools are in tough positions. Like UAB, North Texas, these programs had good years, but they were never in the at-large conversation because in some ways of their strength of schedule, but it's tough. So teams like Duke and Kansas and maybe Michigan State may not want to play Temple because they see them in that weird spot. That's what's changed about scheduling, Pat. His second, Pat used to send us two-parters like this one. The second part, and in honor of opening day, what's your most hated baseball player who isn't a superstar? I know what mine is, but I want to let you guys go first.
I was like, I don't know. I was a Phillies fan growing up, but I was never really like big on like watching baseball all the time. Like there's like a couple players like from my childhood I remember like just growing up watching like Ryan Howard, like Jimmy Rollins and stuff like that. But like I never like, I guess like I hated like Chase Utley after he like left, but like no one else really.
For me, this was before you guys were born. In the late 80s, early 90s, I became a Pittsburgh Pirates fan for a while, and I hated Francisco Cabrera because the Pirates lost in the NLCS 3 years in a row, once to the Reds, twice to the Braves. Game 7 of the 92 NLCS, Francisco Cabrera, a guy who was never really a great player, 2-out single in the bottom of the ninth to drive in a former Pirate and Sid Bream who had a bad knee. And it was either, I think it was Barry Bonds who tried to throw him out. I remember watching the game with my dad. We were both Pirates fans at the time. I liked the Phillies, but had become a Pirates fan. And I remember just sitting there like dumbfounded. I looked at my dad and I thought my dad was going to start to break down and cry. He's like, well, we better get to bed, Johnny. And I was like, all right. But Francisco freaking Cabrera, it wasn't Ron Gant. It wasn't one of their future Hall of Famers. It was Francisco Cabrera who ruined them. So that would be my most hated player who isn't a superstar. Johnny, in the time that it took me to give that answer, have you thought of anybody?
I can't remember his name. It's the pitcher on the Cardinals. In 20
Carpenter?
No, in 2011 when Ryan Howard tore his Achilles.
Oh,
And I'm upset that he didn't just throw him a ball and walk Ryan Howard to first base because Ryan Howard's career would have been completely different.
yeah.
I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I just remember being a 9, 10-year-old kid crying at the TV as Ryan, because I was so upset that Ryan wasn't running to first, and then I was like, oh my God, he's still in the batter's box, and then everything after that collapsed.
Why, Mom? Why?
Exactly.
Can we get
So
ice cream?
I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Pat, we love you. Appreciate the question. Thank you to all of you for the whole slew of mailbag questions we got. Keep them coming. Our listenership numbers been up. Page view numbers have been up. It's a busy time. I know it's crazy with the portal, spring football, a lot of cool stuff going on in terms of, I think people are optimistic about the football program, down about basketball and hoops. Completely get it. But again, there's not going to be a shortage of stuff to talk about. So appreciate you guys listening. As always, again, thank you to Mike Greenspan of Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers for his sponsorship, continued sponsorship of The Scoop. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you guys next week.